we have a lot of smart people trying to build these amazing things and beautiful things, but they're doing it on this faulty system. You know, Jeff Booth always says, right? You can't fix the current system from the current reality.
Yeah, man. People think money is real.
It's all a fugazi. You know what a fugazi is?
Fugazi. It's a fake.
Yeah, fugazi. It's a wazi. It's a woozy. It's a fairy dust. It doesn't exist. It's never landed. It is no matter. It's not on the elemental chart.
Rather than a representation of time. And like the key difference there is people want to like, I want to make more money. I want to be rich. I want to invest more. I need more gains. I need more fiat. And they like, we've been so good. They've pigeonholed us so well into this box where it's like, keep earning more money. Like the system is literally programmed so that you earn more money throughout your life because the money becomes, you know, so much worth so much less. But what we fail to realize is what matters, which is purchasing power. And ultimately all purchasing power is our energy. It's the value that we're able to produce with our time. And so I was just in Vancouver giving this talk at a meetup, and it's like, Bitcoin is a horrible investment, but it's an amazing savings tool. Because when you invest in Bitcoin, it means you want to sell Bitcoin. And when you sell Bitcoin, you are always punished down the line.
Most of the people who are buying assets at some point want to sell the assets at a profit.
People that use fiat currency as a store of value, we call them poor. We call them poor.
Because you're taking your fiat gains and then putting them into something that is ultimately going to perform worse than Bitcoin. I mean, some of the worst things I've ever done is diversify outside of Bitcoin. People are always like, you know, they see the Bitcoin price and we catch up like old friends or whatever. It's like, oh, what's your exit? When do you take some chips off the table? And it's like, what would I do with them? Like, where would they go? Like the money still has to exist. I still want to preserve that value into the future. What am I going to do? Go buy like stocks and bonds of some failing system? Like, you know, put it into fiat, like for it to just literally be programmed to lose value. Like Bitcoin is the only money that is actually programmed to maintain and sometimes even increase your purchasing power. Why would I exit that? Like in what world would you exit the perfect system? And so it's a broken mindset. We're taught from such an early age, you know, you have to invest, you have to diversify, you have to prepare for retirement. And we're kind of put into this box, but the box is sitting on top of this, like you said, this unstable foundation. We need to completely remove those foundational lies that we've been telling our children and our generations for like, honestly, half a century. Like it's, 1971, like it's been a half a century at this point that we've been lying to the up and coming generations. And we have to just remove that. And I think like with very few targeted and specific questions, people get it. But we're not thinking that way off the hop, which is what makes it so challenging.
Mr. Adam O'Brien, Bitcoin well.
Dude, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to get connected and chat here.
I think what's people need to know about you, again, is you started Bitcoin well, 2013? So 10, we're looking, 10, 11 years ago. And, you know, there's not many people that grow business in general. There's not many people that scale a business like you have, taken it public. I mean, you're in a very select few amount of people. And then to be in Bitcoin on top of that and be so early in that space, I mean, you're really in rarefied air. There's no other way to put it. So first off, how are you not one of the more famous people in Bitcoin? I guess that's maybe one of the questions I just thought of.
Dude,
to be quite honest, I mean, that's wild.
I appreciate those kind words. I think I've been so heads down working on building and scaling the business, and I think I've put very little. Honestly, I think it's like the fiat maximalists do a good job of making us, me, self-conscious. I think it's like there's a heavy amount of imposter syndrome that plays into that. And honestly, like the amount of people, and I've got a funny story about this actually. When we went public, you know, it was kind of like at the peak of last year, and we put a lot of effort into my brand. That's kind of when my brand really started. And my dad got some messages from some of his friends, people that had known me my whole life, and they were like, "Oh man, Adam got so lucky getting into Bitcoin so early." And my dad lost it. He was like, "Are you kidding me? Adam hears the word no. Adam hears the, you know, the, like, he gets told that he's crazy. He gets called the most heinous of names, you know, on a weekly, monthly basis." And he's like, "This kid just doesn't stop. He doesn't quit. He just keeps going. And so, but, you know, it's true. I do keep going. The amount of like baggage and imposter syndrome that creates is heavy. And I think I had some misconceived perceptions about how important my brand and my story is. I think that like, honestly, like, we exist to enable independence. I fully believe there are 8 billion people on this earth that need independence, and Bitcoin is a massive contributor to giving them that independence. And so, yeah, I do feel a little bit like I downplayed my own role in that. And I had, you know, this baggage of imposter syndrome sitting on top of it. And then the last few years, I've just been like, to hell with it. Like, it's go time, man. And have been leaning into, you know, spreading the message, spreading awareness. We've got an incredible team here at Bitcoin Well, and they've been able to pick up, you know, some of the slack that I've been pushing down. And yeah, it's been a really positive kind of last few years. And this is, I think, kind of the year where it all goes boom.
So really quick on the business, where I know it was a year or two ago, maybe watching some of your stuff, that you were up to 70 employees. Where are you guys at right now, just organizationally?
Yeah, completely the opposite. So we are down, I think, 12 people full time at this point. Man, it's crazy. Like, going through that go public period in our business, I developed such a high time preference fiat mindset. And you could see and how we scaled and how we grew the business. And it's so toxic. To be clear, I think everyone that worked here was very, very positive, and each and every individual was very good. But I got trapped in the scaling the fiat way, which is, you know, it's almost kind of a badge of honor in that world, how big you can grow it. And I think too, like, you know, on the nth degree, like watching Elon versus like the Elon Twitter versus the Jack Twitter, and Jack's even come out and said like I didn't do a good job. And I think he too got kind of caught in that fiat world. And that's what I did too. And so now what we've done, so when we were doing layoffs, because like we scaled up like the full story is we went public, we had some bankers go public, and I wanted to raise a pile of cash. I said, look, raise a little bit of money, double the business, and then we will raise you a ton of cash. And I was like, all right, let's go. Raise a little bit of money. We tripled the business actually, through like just incredible amounts of unsustainable growth. And then the pin, you know, goes into the Bitcoin, you know, like, what was it? October or November 2021, you know, Bitcoin is not number go up forever. Yeah. Investment bankers are nowhere to be found. And we're stuck with this bloated ecosystem cranking out products, but with a bunch of unsustainable growth. And so I had to really look inwards. We had to do a ton of layoffs, which like absolutely murdered me. And I was like, you know, my time preference has to shift as a business leader. And so that's what we did. There's a lot of maturing to do through the last bear market, but ultimately, you know, we've got a business now with some pretty low time preference. And I think that's a really positive thing. You know, even right now, like our numbers are through the roof right now, and we're doing everything we can not to hire. And that mindset, that key, you know, relatively simple but important shift has been really important. And I think will add to the longevity of our business.
That's incredible. And, you know, we need to bring out the monkey, or not the monkey, the elephant in the room. But, you know, what does Bitcoin Well do? So for people that don't know, let's touch on that. We just kind of like ran right into it. But what does Bitcoin Well do for the person that doesn't know or hasn't heard of Bitcoin Well before?
Yeah, Bitcoin Well is a non-custodial Bitcoin platform. And so we have two different sides to the business. The first business that we launched was Bitcoin ATMs. So I deployed in 2014 Alberta and Saskatchewan's first Bitcoin ATMs. We grew up a small network in Western Canada, and then over the years have grown that to over 200 Bitcoin ATMs across the country. That's business unit number one. Like pretty boring, cash in, Bitcoin out, non-custodial, like super simple. It's not, it doesn't see the insane FOMO that, cycles kind of predict. It's relatively stable. It's a great cash flowing business unit. And in 2022, I realized that there's more to Bitcoin than just accessibility. Our mission at that point was Bitcoin accessibility. And so went through a really solid exercise with the team around what is our core mission? Why do we exist? Why is Bitcoin so important? And we landed on, we want to enable independence. That's why we're here. The money is broken. The censorship is out of hand. North America is falling to, the depths of third world country status. And what do people need? They need independence. And so with that mission, we knew Bitcoin ATMs weren't going to be enough, and we had to launch the Bitcoin portal. Most Bitcoin exchanges that you use, you give them money, you do trading on their platform. There's no real Bitcoin actually changing hands, and then you request withdrawals. I find that absolutely offensive. That is not why Bitcoin exists. That is a fiat. That's applying fiat principles to Bitcoin to sound money, and it's just horrible. And so we flip that on its head. We've employed a non-custodial Bitcoin business model, which means we're direct to consumer. When you send us an e-transfer in Canada, you get real Bitcoin on the blockchain. Like my fastest time is 9 seconds, but on average is about 30 seconds before Bitcoin's on the blockchain. In the USA, we've just launched down there. You connect your bank, money changes, money goes from the bank to the platform, and then boom, same thing. Bitcoin out, real Bitcoin on the blockchain immediately and by default. And it's this automatic self-custody piece that makes Bitcoin well so different. And now the super exciting piece is we've got this cash, the Bitcoin ATMs, we've got the Bitcoin portal in Canada and the USA. Now we can start playing with this ecosystem. And how do we give people the convenience of modern banking, but also help them hold and control their own money? And that's now the fun begins.
So cool. Yeah, that's so cool. And thank you for explaining that too. I'm sure there's some people that are like, what do you do? What's going on? Very cool. It's funny, your story, I really relate to your story. I was in real estate for 10, 12 years after I left playing professional hockey. And I thought that was the world to be in, really from 2010 or 2012 up until 2022. And when I finally left and said, I need to be in this Bitcoin world full time, because I was just being pulled away. My heart was in another place. So over the years, I realized, hey, this was not where I was supposed to be. Technically, I needed to be here for a while, but that type of thing. But I was very uncomfortable, though, to your point of this scaling in putting, getting employees, and like we had a number of employees, and we had a bunch of, agents and like things like that, and felt very uncomfortable because the fiat world didn't make any sense to me. And before really getting into Bitcoin, it just nothing made sense, right? Like it was just like, what am I feeling? Like, why am I feeling this way? And like you said, like you watch CNBC or you watch anything, and it's like, you got to scale quarterly earnings calls. And again, you touch on time preference, which is so beautiful because it's fiat, right? It raises the time preference, and it lowers people's attention spans, and you're constantly in this like grind for more. We're trying to do more ridiculous things and scale, and no one even knows why half the time. It's just like, it is what it is. We got to keep doing it. It's capitalism, yay, and it's like, that's not how this works. And no one could ever explain why that wasn't the case, because we've all grown up in this fishbowl of Keynesianism for 110 years, basically, right? Where it was central banking. There's no choice. There's no way out. Do we know we're wet? We're fish living in the ocean. So does he know he's wet? Like, he doesn't know anything else. He doesn't know deflation. No one living today knows anything but inflation and money or currency that's been destroyed, money that was money, and now it's become currency. So it really is fascinating. So I really resonate with that story you shared. What's a big thing that you have learned over the last 10, 11 years of building the business, being in Bitcoin? What are some of like the big things you see just between running the businesses and people coming into the space and then leaving the space? Or because a lot of the OGs are gone, they're not around anymore, or they are off to some altcoin, or they're doing whatever. What has kept you consistent in just that, that foundational North Star where a lot of people have kind of fallen away over the years?
We want to thank our sponsor. This show is presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards, an orange pill in a pack, making talking about things that normally make you want to cry fun and easy. The scarcest and most educational cards to ever exist. Available now.
Yeah, I think it's the mission, man. Like, I think, like, pretty hard to build independence when you're not using, you know, the root core of what independence money is, right? Like, and I honestly think, you know, at first it was Bitcoin accessibility. You know, how do we allow people to buy Bitcoin? Like ultimately, if your mission is to, you know, have Bitcoin accessibility or independence, you are incapable of shilling some like super thin altcoin, right? You're incapable of acting with fiat principles in a custodial way. You're incapable of doing things that are counter Bitcoin, because like the logic just doesn't allow for it to happen. Like you just, you know, you're either just lying, or you believe it. And so at the end of the day, yeah, the mission is very exciting to me. You know, we're early in our days of the mission. And I think, you know, don't get me wrong, there's ebbs and flows to the business. And there's times where, you know, selling the business or whatever seemed like the best thing to do. But I think all that was just part of my Bitcoin journey, and everyone's Bitcoin journey looks pretty similar. You know, you enter for the gains because that's all you hear about. And then you stay for the principles and the core values, and the bumps and bruises along the way are really what harden us as true Bitcoiners. And you know, like I think about the future quite a bit, and I think about my great grandkids that I'll hopefully, you know, get to see one day. And I just like need to be able to look them in the eyes and be like, yo, like we were Bitcoin. We helped this rise. We helped this peaceful revolution come to be. You know, the reason we are here, the reason we've got a sovereign nation is in part because I worked so hard and we had this vision that we needed to be independent for the next, you know, like whatever, millennia.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's really grounding that way. It's training, it's making a ton of mistakes. Like I've spent Bitcoin on dumb things. I've had the high time preference. Like I've made the mistakes, man. And so I now get to hopefully share my story and help other people not make those mistakes.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head right there. Stories are how people learn, right? It's, you know, parable stories, and that's how humans learn. And we have,
dude, and that dates back. Like the printing press is what is like, that's it, man. That's how we got it done, right? It was like you weren't able to pass on knowledge for centuries. Like for a really long time, we were just stuck. And then the printing press comes about, and we can just disseminate knowledge. And then internet comes, and that net gets wider. And it's like the natural progression of how humans evolve is so beautiful. And it's all down to communication. And so to your point about like off the top, like, why haven't you heard of me before? It's like, I had my head in the sand, and I wasn't thinking that way. I wasn't thinking that big. I was so focused on, you know, the what, and not focused enough on the why. And I realize now the why is so important. What we do is so important. You know, this conversation, other conversations like it, people understanding how important Bitcoin is, how important taking custody of their Bitcoin is. And you know, like right here, like the 6102 reminder, like guys, we got to hold our coins. It's not going to be a pleasant ride. It's not number go up, rainbows and Lambos forever. It's like we're part of a revolution. And I think getting people on board with that, excited about that, inspired by that is a pretty positive thing.
I couldn't agree more. Like I said earlier, I mean, I think it was offline. I mean, kindred spirits, you know, you can just tell a lot of times people's ethos, they come together, right?
Totally.
And same vibration. Why do people still fall for scams? Again, like I'm still like, my brain cannot wrap my head. I mean, you say it so plainly, so beautifully, and with passion, but not at the same time yelling at the top of your lungs, right? It's just so beautifully articulated. Why do people continually lower their time, you know, attention span, raise their time preference, and they fall for these scams? They're falling for, you know, whatever, I call it Ethereum, right? All the alts on down. Why are we continually going down this road of, I'm going to pump my bags here, or I'm going to go to this world computer thing and I'm going to build, but again, you're building on sand until we fix this system or created a new one and shifted to it. You're on the Titanic still. It doesn't matter what you create on the Titanic. It's still going 12,000 feet under the ocean. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. And that's the thing I can't reconcile with myself, Adam. I just can't. I don't know. Help me out here.
I think it's a combination of some deep-seated generational trauma, if you want to call it that. And and honestly, it's people not in Bitcoin for freedom. Like we come in, everybody comes in for gains. And frankly, Bitcoin is not the best place for gains, right? We all know that, but there's so much more to Bitcoin than fiat gains. And if you hold Bitcoin, if you lower your time preference, you understand why it exists, you know it's the better place to put your money, right? But it's not going to be what grows your fiat value the fastest. And so the reason we flock towards scams, especially in, at certain points of the epoch, like what we're in right now, is the same reason, like the same reason people snort cocaine instead of getting a good night's sleep. Like, it's just like, it's high time preference, short-term thinking, like, oh, I need some energy. What should I do? Pound a Red Bull and do a couple lines and you're going to be flying. You're good to go. Yes. And you don't really think, well, but in 4 years, I'm going to have needles sticking out of my arms and probably not be able to think. And that is the same thing. Like, altcoins are heroin. Altcoins are cocaine. They are probably very, very fun for a short period of time and ultimately ruin your life. And so that's why our mission to enable independence is so key. We're not here to make people rich. I'm not like, I want to pump everyone's bags forever. Like, that's not the case. That's not why we're here. We're here because people, my great-great-great-grandson needs Bitcoin. And I know that for a fact. That is facts. There's he needs Jesus and Bitcoin. And like everything else is probably just comes and goes in waves. And so when we believe this, there's not really room for altcoin du jour. There's not really room for fiat scam of the day, because I'm just focused on 2157, like the year 2157. I don't need more fiat in 2025. I need more Bitcoin in 2157. And the risk opportunity cost, sure, there's an argument. And I had this discussion with a lady last week. She's like, yeah, I dabble in the crypto casino to gain more Bitcoin. And I'm like, you got more balls than me, because it's too scary there. Like, the opportunity that I lose my Bitcoin in the crypto or the fiat casino is just too great. And frankly, people ask me all the time, what's the next altcoin, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, guys, if you want to gamble, go to the casino. Like, here in Canada, casino winnings are tax-free. Just go play cards. It's a little bit more fun. You can kind of, it's social. It's way less stressful. Go play blackjack or go to the roulette table, whatever. It's so dangerous to play in that crypto casino. But yeah, the reason we do is because we're addicted, because we've got this base foundation that is so sketchy. We're all when the money sucks, we're all in a constant panic to spend, right? You got to spend, you got to invest, you got to get gains, you got to grow. What did the report, inflation peaked at 18% last year in the States or something mind blowing. That means if you're not making 18% per year, you're losing. Holy smokes, that's crazy. You gotta make 18% to break even. That's mind blowing. That's petrifying. And so we're in this constant state of panic. And honestly, it's the greatest trick by the globalists, because, if you're in that state of spending all the time, you've got no savings, and you're always going to be reliant on the globalist of the day. And that's, it's it's a wicked psyop, man.
Yeah. So well said. I love it. All right, really quick timeout from our regular scheduled program here. Are you going to the Canadian Bitcoin conference?
Yeah, man, you bet. I'm excited. So this year, I'm going to be at BitBlock Boom in a few weeks. I'm going to be in Montreal. I'm going to be at Mass Adoption, the Freedom Festival in Boston. And then we're going to Nashville as well. So it should be a pretty sweet kind of Q2, Q3 here.
That's awesome. I think I'll be at all of those, except I think Mass Adoption. I think I'm going bear hunting out west in Idaho. So that'll
be awesome. Good for you. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the patience we have some land in Alberta here. And I've got some neighbors that hunt moose and elk out there, and they always give me some of the meat, which is amazing. Nice. That is the better way for me. I don't think I could sit still in a forest.
You're a resourceful man. Yeah, you're a resourceful man. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know, man. So smarter for you.
Smarter, not harder. All right, back. We're back here. Sorry, we had a tangent, everyone, really quickly. So you kind of just touched on something that made me think of this, which I want to segue just briefly, we don't have to spend too much time into this the Ethereum talk and just explaining Ethereum, which will kind of help people, I think, realize in a way all the rest of the alts. You know, it's like if you kind of explain Ethereum for a minute, it'll kind of, people start to get the idea of like, oh, I kind of see what's going on here for a lot of what comes after. So my one thing that you just made me kind of think of too right before this was, you know, Bitcoin is the end, you know, right? Like we always say, like, oh, it's fire, it's a printing press, it's a wheel. And like, that's the easy, like clickbaity way to think about it, I guess. But, you know, I'd love for you to touch on Bitcoin being the end. This was decades in the making, right? Like it wasn't like someone just all of a sudden like, oh, I just discovered Bitcoin, you know, like it just came together. Like this was decades in the making.
Dude,
and
it's
now
like
everyone
the
thinks
encryption
that
protocol from,
it shuts
like
off after Bitcoin, right? Like,
it's
can
incredible.
You explain that
It's
to people
so many
that way?
different, it's so many different innovations like layered on top of each other. Sorry, I keep cutting you off. Keep going.
No. I just think it's so important for people to realize all these alts, like everything is it's moot after a Bitcoin because it was the end. Like we discovered fire truly, and the meaning or what it represents when we say that, it's like this was worked on for decades. Encryption, the cypherpunks for decades. People trying to figure this out, and then it got figured out. So anything that comes after that, you don't recreate fire, right? So I think that's a concept that people have a hard time. They think Bitcoin was the start of all this digital money and all this different stuff. So anyway, I'd love for you to just touch on that briefly and then segue into kind of Ethereum and just explaining that for a minute. And I think hopefully it'll make sense for people once they see this, kind of the scales fall from the eyes.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is simply a representation of money and of true money, which is just our value, right? Whereas everything else that we've kind of invented, I suppose, since then, is using this like blockchain database system to get scalable database entries. And frankly, like Google Sheets does a pretty good job of doing database entries. It's like obviously pretty centralized, but you could argue so too are literally every other blockchain other than Bitcoin. Sure. And the big confusion comes from, what are we doing? Why do we want to use this token? And with Bitcoin, it's to store our value, right? With Ethereum, Solana, like, you know, all the other different blockchains that exist, the reason they're there is to pump fiat bags, or at least have an opportunity to have found the next best thing. Because I do believe that, you know, in the fiat world, in the fiat casino, you know, there was like the .com bubble, and now there's like social media that's kind of like taken on, and boom, now it's AI. Crypto is a piece of that. And there will be platforms that make great businesses that succeed, but they're doing it under the false pretense that they're decentralized and that they're the same as Bitcoin. Like when I first got in, Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain were all kind of like in this ball. They were all kind of together, and it was all like one and the same. Like honestly, it was like, you know, if someone said, "Oh, Adam runs a blockchain company," I would have accepted it. It's like, okay, sure. Like that's just yes. But now, you know, we're seeing like blockchain is kind of like out on its own. You know, people do their own blockchain stuff, not even to do with money or crypto as a whole. Then there's crypto, which is just like basically a token to run the database. And then there's Bitcoin being sound money, right? The Bitcoin token doesn't run the database. The database is a representation of everyone's value. The Bitcoin token is the representation, the Bitcoin token sitting on that blockchain is the proof of work that we have actually earned, and that token of value is actually meaningful. And so that sits in its own cupboard, on its own sphere, boom, on its own. You know, when you're buying ETH, you're basically buying like the future. If it is the future of the internet, and if all the smart contract dreams that we're being told about are all real, you're basically just buying credits to the future of the internet. Like you're buying a gift card to the future of the internet, right? Yeah. The same could be said of like, if HTTP had a token, ETH is just that. Like we can all access the internet, the HTTP protocol on our own for free through like a browser. You don't need any HTTP tokens to do that. The only difference between HTTP and the Ethereum network is that the Ethereum network, you need ETH to participate. And that's the big difference. And I think too, like, honestly, I think ETH is the worst one because it's too decentralized to be scalable. It's not fast enough, right? For this high time preference. Like think about the difference between like a Bitcoiner who's like walking around with holes in his shoes, you know, just stacking sats like a hero, and like the JPEG like junkie that's like, oh, my confirmations are not fast enough. Like I'm dying here. I need more monkeys. Like, you know, like the the diabolical differences between the two individuals just show you where the time preferences are at. And honestly, I think Ethereum is too decentralized to be like, to suit those people, but it's too centralized to be safe. And it just doesn't solve the root problem. Like, the key, the absolute key to sound money is that it's scarce. You just absolutely need a supply cap. And there's just a bunch of fake supply caps that exist in crypto. Bitcoin is the only one that truly has a supply cap. And then, you know, next to that, like divisibility, transferability, like the ability to for it to be authenticated, like all of these things hit Bitcoin so well. And some of them hit ETH and the Ethereum network and, you know, all the other like tokens that are popping up, but they don't provide any function. They don't provide any true real value to actually store our time. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, the key difference there is, why do you want to get into the ecosystem? Well, I want to store my value in a place that will transport my value that I create today into the future. It's like, great, you need Bitcoin, go for it. It's like, why do you want to get in here? Well, I want to buy credits to the potential future of smart contracts. It's like, okay, then you should buy ETH. And like, good for you. Maybe your ETH credits, you know, your Ethereum credits go up 1,000x, right? Good for you. But maybe they don't. Like, it is guaranteed that Bitcoin will transport your value into the future. It is not guaranteed that Ethereum is the future of smart contracts. And so it's like, where's your risk at? Like, what's your risk tolerance? People think like, people think they need to diversify and that Ethereum and Bitcoin are the same. That just comes down to education. It comes down to a lack of resources. And honestly, this is the biggest problem with decentralization, is that there's no single source, which is like the long-term benefit, but the short-term demise. Yes. And so it can get tricky.
Yeah, it's well said. Man, oh man, that's a whole different thing. We could go down that for hours too. Really, really quickly, as I know we are getting somewhat towards the end here. What was your orange pill story? So again, you were, just to remind everyone, you were starting businesses in Bitcoin in 2013, 11 years ago. So what was your orange pill story that led you to, hey, I'm here, this is unreal, I'm starting a business? What did that look like?
Yeah, I found Bitcoin early 2013. And, you know, like it would just hit $100 and it just piqued my interest. And I was like, whoa, you know, this is fake. Like, there's no way this is real. These guys are idiots. Like, look at these dumb, you know, gamers that think Bitcoin is going to be something. Let me like troll on them a little bit. And then you learn about Bitcoin and it's like, you know, why is money important? And what am I trying to do with my money? And then, you know, what is the history of money actually? And like, oh, encryption, that's interesting. I wonder why that's important. And then like, before you know it, you're just, you know, like the crazy guy, I forget the little actor's name. He's like got the cigarette out of his mouth with like all the string lines behind him on the, like, yeah. That's me. Like, after like, you know, a month and a half of like really solid, like, you know, insane, just obsessive investigation. It's like, oh, wow, this is the real deal. But again, it's still for gains. And then it's like, well, I have to try buying some. And so you buy some, it's like a terrible experience. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe I will, you know, maybe I'll try selling it myself. And then I sell some and I've got a bit of a better customer experience. I'm like my first ever Bitcoin experience, like back alley, like super sketchy, like no help. I'm like petrified. I'm just like, you know, I'm basically a teenager and like, you know, trying to buy Bitcoin in the back alley. There's no like
wasn't easy then. Just to, like, for people that are newer to the space, man, there was not like easy way.
Crazy. Yeah. It was not easy at all. And so that's one thing. And then I'm like, well, I'll meet people in Starbucks and we'll have a coffee and chat about Bitcoin. I'll like help them set up a wallet, like, you know, just like little things like that. And then kind of just fell in love with, you know, and then with teaching people how Bitcoin works. And then, you know, on and on it goes. And there's more and more people. There's like dopamine hitting me every time I'm helping someone. They're like, wow, this is the future. This is so cool. So yeah, I guess the orange pill story, there's not like an aha moment. I didn't like, you know, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I ran into Andreas Antonopoulos during his like Bitcoin OG days and he like smacked me over the head. And then Saifedean came and like bought me with his book. And then that was it. It was like just the natural progression of, you learn about Bitcoin, you're there for you're there to disprove it. Then you got to learn about like money and the history of money and economics and encryption and all the fun things that Bitcoin is. And then you can like learn about buying it, and then you can learn about storing it, and then you lose it all, and then you repeat. and honestly, that's that's the story. It's it's a boring one, but it's been exciting to get here.
I think it's so cool. And this is what I think, of course, I went on a tangent earlier, but you were talking about stories, right? And we, the Bible, Jesus, this is how humans learn is stories. And I think, again, one of the most important stories is telling that story. And, you telling yours, me telling mine, everyone telling their story, because, like we can see here with the facts, oh, it's 21 million and this and that, but no one cares at the end of the day. Like no one out there really cares if we're trying to orange pill or educate someone. It's, what were these things that happened that changed me emotionally, physically, whatever, and then trying to convey that emotional state to the next person. And stories are how we do that. So I think that's why it really is so important, because everyone's is different and everyone's going to connect to a different thing. So I appreciate you sharing that. What do you think? The last 10 years, again, 10, 11 years, you've been in the space now, 11 years. What do you think the next, decade looks like to you? Having seen, really close to the beginning of this and kind of watching this all the way through more than most people have the experience of, what do you see? And I know it's a very loaded question, but like, even like just off the cuff thoughts of like what you see coming in the coming years, next, epoch or so, but next, couple epochs.
Yeah, man, I do think we'll continue to see the decoupling of Bitcoin, crypto, and the blockchain. I think we're going to continue to see people right now are so lucky. The opportunity to jump in and just like front run all of the mistakes that, you and I and others have made, jump straight into a Bitcoin only kind of savings mindset. There's so much benefit to that. I think if I had just stacked sats instead of like all the other things that I did, it would be so good. And so I think there's going to be a lot of hardcore Bitcoiners born over the next little while. Ultimately though, and like, I don't want to be like all, doom, gloom, like blah, blah. But I do think there's a little bit of pain coming with like, if you don't have your coins in self-custody, if you're not doing the responsible thing with like UTXO management, like there is a little bit of nuance to being a sovereign individual. And I don't know that our society is ready for that nuance. And so we went through this period.
Say it, Adam.
It's like we're just not preparing our kids. We're not preparing the next generation to be sovereign. And so I think that Bitcoin will act as the root cause for sovereignty. And I think it will breed out of it a bunch of like Bitcoin adjacent, companies or missions. And like an example of that's going to be like education. Like it's so crazy, man. When you're hanging out with Bitcoiners, you're all aligned. You're all like, education should look like this. It's like, yep. It's like social media should look like this. Yep. Like, the human diet should look like this. Yep. Like, it's like, we're all just aligned because we're all like there's some people I haven't even met. And it's like, what's up? Like you dap them up and it's like, oh yeah, we are like you and I, it's like, we are hyper aligned on most things. I gave a presentation in Costa Rica this January. It was called Jesus is a Bitcoiner, which is like super awesome presentation that I'm really excited to be giving more of this year. Awesome. And I put just different themes in one of the slides of presentations. There's like, I think 6 or 7 themes, like pharma, nutrition, education, like whatever, essentially, blah, blah, blah. And it's like in the presentation, I'm literally like, I am quite confident that every single person sitting here is going to have the same beliefs that I do about this, only because like we're Bitcoiners, we've got our ethos like formed in sovereignty and we know what sovereignty means for that. So it comes back down to the why. So where does it go over the next decade? I think Bitcoiners starting non-Bitcoin businesses are going to be so clutch and so key because that's going to be the next onboarding wave to Bitcoin. People, you and I, our like onboarding generation, we were onboarded for gains, but down the line, people are going to be onboarded for the freedom. And that's going to be so good. But when that starts happening, I think it'll only be because there's a necessity for freedom, which means there's like, a bunch of non-freedom going on, which kind of
Wow, that was very well said. I don't know how you threaded that needle with how you said that. Wow. Very politically correct. Man, beautiful, beautiful. Holy cow. All right, I know we're getting towards the end here. This is the other thing. This is twice now I have tried to make this darn point, and I keep going on tangents, whatever. But and you just kind of touched on it, which is Bitcoiners have gone through the gauntlet. Why the stories are so important, and what you just explained here, because Bitcoiners have gone through the gauntlet. Again, we didn't wake up one day. Oh, I've got 1,000 Bitcoin. I've got 10,000. I've got 10. I've got 1 Bitcoin. We didn't. That it's hard work that went into it. It's thousands of hours of studying. It's hard work. It's digging ditches. It's doing your fiat mining job to convert it into Bitcoin, or trading peer-to-peer for service for it. You name it. It's being in altcoins or shit coins, and then, getting rugged or whatever it is. We've all, being in gold or being in stocks and getting rugged or whatever it is. That's the journey that every Bitcoiner has to take. And you touched on that very early on, but I think that's what's so key, because people just look at it like, Bitcoiners, you're going to have all the wealth. It's like, well, yeah, everyone that moved to North America 400, 500 years ago, they obtained a lot of wealth that my family didn't get an opportunity for. A lot of our families didn't get an opportunity to get Malibu real estate or Miami real estate, and it is what it is. That's how life works. But we put the hours in. Those people 400 or 500 years ago crossed the ocean. My family didn't right away. They took longer to go to make the decision. Like, you know what, we should do that. So that's going to be the same in Bitcoin. And I think that's something very real that people are going to, like you said, learn these lessons. And it's incumbent on us to educate people through that. But we've all been through that gauntlet. So
I think that's actually a great analogy. And we need to make better ways to cross the ocean. And that's how we're going to help as many people as possible gather this wealth. But the nice thing about it is people got a hard time with the supply cap, all the wealth. It's all the wealth already exists. All the wealth is just simply how much value can a society produce. The problem is that we keep seeing number go up because the wealth is decreasing. The actual purchasing power of that wealth is just decreasing. And so it's an unfair system right now. Bitcoin levels it out. We actually want all the wealth to be in circulation. That way it's if you keep providing value, you'll be able to keep living a good life. And if you stop providing value, then you're going to have to provide more value to live a good life. That's just what it comes down to. And that's how it should be.
So cool, man. There's so many other things we could touch on here. Really, I love that article, by the way. You'll have to share that with me. The Jesus is a Bitcoiner, the presentation. I love that. That's a whole different topic for another day for sure, that we get into at some point. Maybe at the conference, maybe in Montreal or something like that. We can record a little.
I think I'm either giving it in Montreal or I'm on I don't remember.
Oh, nice.
I'm talking on the subject in Montreal, so it should be pretty good.
Beautiful. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Really quick, before I play, we play a little word association game to wrap here. Will, do you think government, and again, this is kind of loaded, but attacking, it just feels in many ways whether it was the Canadian truckers or here in America, things going on, and they're going to find these crazier and crazier ways as the fiat man in the water, the drowning fiat man in the water is just continually grasping at things. Do you sense something where they're going to continue trying to come after, like you said, is going to be a lot of non-freedom going on in the future? Which gives us more freedom inherently. I mean, is that kind of what you see just happening in the fork? Because that's what I see.
Yeah, I do think so. I think ultimately the biggest risk is just not taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. The biggest risk is your Bitcoin sitting, you having Bitcoin exposure in an ETF, you having Bitcoin sitting in an exchange somewhere. The majority of Bitcoin exchanges just use Coinbase for custody. So it's
right.
You know what I mean? It's all centralized. There's a reason 6102 is on my wall behind me. It's because it's a stark reminder that when your Bitcoin is not in your custody, 100%.
What's Brian Armstrong's admitted? Yeah, I'm going to give it up. I have to if the government comes, right? So
obviously he will, right? Gun to his daughter's head. He doesn't care about you and I. He doesn't care whatsoever, right? It's no, I am going to give the Bitcoin up. And so how do you do that? It's just don't give him that opportunity. Take the Bitcoin away from him into your self-custody. I think that's why 1933 worked, is because gold was so difficult to transport. Bitcoin is so easy to transport, so simple to self-custody that it's kind of a no-brainer. It's kind of the holy grail. We have a second chance here, guys. Our grandfathers, our grandmothers, they lost their value. They gave the government to the gold. They gave the gold to the government. And we have an opportunity to say, wow, let's learn from that mistake. Let's take our Bitcoin, our value into our self-custody, and let's not let that happen. And like, that's just the answer. It's like, it's not rocket science, I don't think.
Beautiful stuff, man. All right. I want to play a little word association game with you, and really quick before that. And I keep saying this, but really quick, Logan Paul, I know you've got a little thing, cards growing up. Obviously, I lead marketing at Bitcoin Trading Cards, and you have a little backstory with like Logan Paul, his Pokemon card, everything. When did you get into cards? Were you collecting hockey cards growing up as a kid? Like, how did this journey really start with you?
Yeah, Pokemon. My dad remembers just taking me to 7-Eleven every Saturday. And we were just talking about this week, and he was like, you know, every time you'd spend your money on those cards, I thought, oh, wow, those things are going to be garbage in next year. And like Pokemon is just like, I've got like this, this insane amount of nostalgia for Pokemon. I collected growing up. It's like super high time preference, fiat, blah, blah, the Pokemon and hockey stuff. But it's definitely, an emotional nostalgia thing. Love the cards. I think they're so cool. Collectibles, something real. It's part of the story. I think it's fantastic.
Good stuff, brother. All right. Word association game presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards. I'm just going to give you a lightning round here and probably 15 or so words, and just whatever, the one word that comes up to your mind right away within the guardrails, I guess, if you will.
Okay, so, sure.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Anonymity.
Tesla.
Energy.
AI.
Danger.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Marketing.
Elon Musk.
Insane.
Faith.
Important.
Education.
Wrong.
Disruption.
Important again. That's kind of a cop-out.
I love it. Vitalik Buterin.
Fake.
Freedom.
Bitcoin.
Government.
Anti-freedom.
Time preference.
Low.
Ooh, I like that. Wow, I like that. Bitcoin maximalist.
Misguided.
Canadian truckers.
Based.
Mentorship.
Needed.
Bitcoin trading cards.
Cool.
Bitcoin well.
Independence.
And lastly, Adam O'Brien's brand.
Up forever, Laura.
Oh, amazing. Good stuff, dude. Well, hey, I appreciate you being a playable character in this world, in this sea of non-playable characters. That's for dang sure. Kindred spirits. We could do this for hours, and we'll have to do much more.
And we should, and we will.
I appreciate it, Adam, so much.
Let's, you know what? We're going to have a big house in Montreal. I'll bring some studio gear. I'm going to start setting this up. We'll chop it up and start having some conversations.
We have Lavish. I already told Lavish we got to have some hockey stories. We got to get together and chop it up there. Yeah, I'm going to play. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm not going to play. I broke my femur playing hockey, and I'm like, I don't think I don't have the gas anymore, but I'm going to be on the mic, I think, or I'll be involved in some way. So it should be fun.
Let's go. Dude, appreciate it, brother. I look forward to it so much. This is a blast.
Amazing. Thanks, Brandon. Take care.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Playable Characters Show, brought to you by Bitcoin Trading Cards. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the future Bitcoin and financial experts we have on the show. Plus, we will be doing random big giveaways throughout different moments of shows of collectible cards, sats, merch, and more from guests, so you won't miss anything. This show does not constitute any investment advice, only freedom advice. Everything you see here is opinions from the host and the guests themselves, nothing further. Please don't trust, verify. For full transparency, I do lead marketing efforts at Bitcoin Trading Cards, where we are trying to spread freedom to all of humanity and orange pill the world one collectible physical trading card at a time by making things fun and easy to talk about that normally make you want to cry. You can reach me directly through my email, brandon@btc-cards.com, with any inquiries or playable character suggestions. See you on the next one.